It's Katie Rose, straight up with a twist. What's up, humans? This is Katie Rose, straight up with a twist. Welcome to the show. So today I have with me my very best friend, Marilyn Vaca, and she is actually living in Jacksonville. And, we met out here in Orlando for unforeseen circumstances a long, long time ago. And it led me to realizing this is something that needs to be talked about. This is something that people throw around the word all of the time. And I'm not sure that they know the gravity of the meaning of the word and how it can really destroy people's lives. So the word is narcissism. And along with narcissism, I want to discuss personality disorder. But Marilyn, I'll let you kind of take the reins on we don't have to go into like every major detail, but just the short version of the experience we had. Well, we're not going to say any names on this show, but just an experience that we had together and kind of what brought us to being like, you know what, this should be discussed. And with the Me Too movement and everything, people are being more open about it and understanding how to stand up for themselves and protect themselves, and then to see the signs of these things before you get to where you were.
Well, thank you, Katie, for having me. I'm very happy to be here. So yes, we met under very unusual circumstances. And I say that it was kind of like the silver lining to something that was not so great, our friendship. You and I have been friends since 2016. And we met because we both were connected to a person that taught us about narcissism and narcissists. Neither of us had known what the word meant. We'd never heard of it. I'd never heard of it. I didn't know that this type of person existed. I found myself in a relationship with someone who basically followed all of the narcissistic traits of love bombing and then discarding and then confusion and gaslighting and all of these things that I'd never experienced before, and caused me a lot of distress and confusion. During this relationship, I would say that I lost part of myself under the umbrella of being a victim of a narcissist and not really understanding what was going on. You, unfortunately, had a relationship with the same narcissist at a different time, and that's how we met. And once I realized what had happened, and once I realized what narcissists were and what this person was about, I truly didn't want anyone else to hurt the way I did and to be confused the way I did. And so when you and I were able to connect, I really felt, even though I didn't know you, I felt protective of you in a way that I knew you were a good person who didn't quite understand what she was getting into.
Yeah.
And so therefore, you and I, in an unconventional way, ended up connecting and learning from each other. It was very uncomfortable and awkward at first, obviously, because we're connected to the same narcissist. But in the end, it, I think, made us both stronger, smarter, and closer as friends. So,
yes, it did. You were in my wedding.
No, I know. And we have traveled together and we have had some really fun experiences together. And, you've seen me at my best, at my worst. I mean, we really have been great friends through the years. And it's really the best thing that ever happened.
Out of that shitty situation.
In regards to this narcissist experience that was really very awful.
Well, I was looking up like the definitions. So it says that it's basically a personality disorder. And I try to explain that to people. But narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their importance, a deep need for admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. But behind the mask of the ultra confidence, the lies is this fragile self-esteem that's vulnerable to the slightest criticism. And this person being in entertainment, well, that doesn't bode well for this
Yeah.
type of disorder. The personality disorder, and it says that it limits their ability to function and relate in relationships and other areas of their life, such as work or school. They call it a cluster B personality disorder, which means it's part of a group of disorders characterized by dramatic, emotional, or erratic thinking or behavior. It's interesting. I know that you went to therapy, didn't you?
Oh gosh. This actually, I mean, affected me, I think, in a much more impactful and difficult way than it did you. I think that we were at different levels of um, self-awareness. And I say that because when you are not self-aware, you can fall victim to someone who is a narcissist and believe everything and be blinded by the mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in your sense of it, you were very self-aware and you knew something wasn't right. You questioned a lot of things. And I took everything for face value.
Right.
So what happened to me was I had a breakdown in a sense of what just happened to me. Why did I act this way for however many months I was in this relationship? Why did I allow myself to be taken advantage of in this terrible way? And how could this be me? Who am I? What just happened? And I had a breakdown because there was so much confusion and gaslighting in my head that I kept replaying things that I thought were real and weren't. So I had to go to therapy to figure it all out. I had to sort it all out. So it really did impact me, I think, in one of the most formative ways, in the sense of I learned a whole lot about myself after that. Now I can spot a narcissist a mile away. And I also became more self aware and smarter about myself, my relationships, and trusting people.
Now, I remember that he actually, when I was dating him, apparently I never witnessed it. I never met this person, but he claimed that he was seeing a therapist. But the problem is, if you have narcissistic tendencies, you will go in, believe, like making up stories. So you're going to your therapist and creating lies. And hopefully, it's a good enough therapist that can see through it. But if you're going in manipulating, if that's your purpose going in because you want a specific outcome from it to prove that you're not those things, then you're never going to heal. Part of me, it's like borderline, because I call it a personality disorder because he also had sociopathic tendencies. And that was where like the fear started coming in for me. And what I started noticing was the lies. I would catch him looking at other girls on his phone, and then he always fidgeted with his hands. And that's when I knew, that he was hiding something from me. And when I actually sold his house, which was crazy, the one that you were going to be living in, and bought all the furniture for and used you for your money and status, and just he was creating a character, a person that was not him, and thinking in his head that like that he can do that. And I saw this recently with Sean Puffy Combs. Sean Puffy Combs kept changing his name. It might as well have just been Puff at that point, right? Like that's the joke. Like he just kept changing his name because he wanted whatever was associated. Did he kill Tupac? Did he do all these other things? Did he beat women? So he just kept changing his identity as he went along. And Puff Daddy reminds me of the way that our ex acted. And it's just completely going from girl to girl to girl and re-characterizing yourself. Literally, it's like
He's
an acting gig.
reinventing. Yeah, it's an acting gig. It's like he's reinventing the person that he wants to be in that moment in that relationship. And it's not who he is at all. In fact, I still don't know who he is. I have no clue. I don't know who this person was when I was
He doesn't know who he is.
spending, yeah, I was spending time with him. I don't know. And you're absolutely right. It was an act. He created this person that I wanted in my life by listening. And this is what narcissists do. They listen, they pay attention, And then they take everything you say and everything that they can learn about you, and they create this facade that allows you to feel like, oh my God, I met my soulmate. Who is this person? He's just like fell from the heavens, right? He's perfect. Well, that's the act. I think that, what we're seeing in, not only entertainment, but when you look at the things that are happening in this world around us, you're seeing a lot of narcissistic personality disorder, around you, because people are very, damaged. They're very, this starts at a damaged person. When they're younger, they say that narcissists are extremely damaged in the sense that, like you said, they don't know who they are. And the reason that they are this narcissistic personality disorder is because they're trying to cover up this shame and this damaged person that they were from a very young age. And so, you have to kind of feel sad for that. But in the meantime, they are creating so much destruction, hurt, and danger in their path of, narcissistic destruction throughout their life, of lies and gaslighting and all the things that they do. And it catches up to them in the end. Like, you see a lot of downfall of narcissists lately, and especially with the Me Too movement. Like you said, I think that a lot of men who have this sociopathic narcissistic personality disorder are getting called out. They're finally getting seen for who they are and what they've done and what they're doing. So I think that we're just a more educated world when it comes to that. I want to say that there are people in my family who I believe may have this personality disorder, my father. And in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, nobody knew what this was. Nobody talked about it. But now looking back, I'm thinking we are so much smarter and more aware of behaviors and how they can affect people than we were then. And I think now this personality disorder, people say it and they throw it around a lot as far as like, you're a narcissist. No, you're a narcissist, whatever. It becomes this blanket statement now. I think people are using it as an excuse, and they're misusing the term because they don't understand. But I'm also saying that I'm very proud of the people who are educating themselves and making themselves aware and calling out the real narcissists and the real people who are causing damage.
Yeah, because just being cocky isn't being a narcissist. It's not enough just to be cocky. So.
Right. And that's the thing, is that, if you don't like something about somebody, all of a sudden, oh, now you're a narcissist. Well, no, that's not it. It's much deeper than that. And it goes much further than that. And it's serious. It's a serious thing to see and to be aware of, because like you said to me, that you can spot it in people now, and it makes you uncomfortable.
And it happened to me at work recently, where I realized that this person kept on, like I said, creating a character. And he had the same like one-liners about his past or something. He kept saying, so a year ago, he'd be like, oh, I did this gig. I was in this commercial. And I'm like, okay, but you told me that 2 years ago. And I'm like, and then I'd ask him like, hey, what have you been up to recently? Oh, I was in this commercial. I'm like, that's what you said 2 years ago. I'm asking you like, what's new? What's up now? There was never any clarification on who this girlfriend was that he had. He would never say her name. He has no social media. And you know that our ex dropped off of the face of the earth with social media, but then he would find ways to like DM other women and stuff like that.
Or create new accounts under different names.
Guises. Yes. And it gets scary because you are believing in this character. And then you start finding out, you're like, wait, this isn't true. This is not a real thing. And then there's the emotional part of it. So narcissists, like, they fake cry to manipulate other people or to gain attention or make themselves seem like the victim. And they twist things to make it seem like it's your fault, which is the gaslighting part of it. You're the reason I am here. I remember when I was breaking up with him, it's like, this is your problem. You're the reason. Or when I was dating him, he put all the blame on you. And I understand. And that was kind of what triggered it for me, because when you were reaching out to me, of course, I could have just been like, oh, this girl's just jealous because I have her new man. I could have thought that way. But then the fact that normally when someone breaks up with someone, they don't just completely hate that person. And if you do completely bash that person, usually people will be like, yeah, well, we had our differences and it didn't work out because of this or that or the other. It was like anything I brought up, like, hey, Marilyn told me this happened. Did this happen? He's like, no, she's a lying bitch. And it's like, wait a minute. This doesn't sound right. Like, you can't just blame all of these things and say they didn't happen or that they don't exist or that someone's completely fabricating them. And then he'd come up with a new story. Oh, remember that thing that you said? Well, actually, this part was true, but not this part. And then I just started picking up the pieces. And I remember sometimes he would cry. It was like, and it looked fake. And I was looking at him like, is this real right now? Like, it looks like you're putting on a show. This doesn't feel like you're actually upset about anything. It feels like you're just performing, like there's a camera on you right now. And it felt very strange. And then he was threatening my job. He was threatening getting a lawyer for selling his house and saying that it's a conflict of interest. I'm like, that's not a thing. Like, anybody can sell a house. It's fine.
Well, we can never accuse him of being smart. He was
No,
not smart.
that's true. And I remember he was being so mean, and I have all these threatening emails and these evil things that he would call me and scream and yell at me, like literally screaming at me. And then on the day of the closing of his house, and he was like all happy, and he's like showing me a picture of a dog that he just bought for $3,000, which was the same breed of dog that I said I wanted. And he was just sitting there like all smiles and look at these pictures. And I was like, you're crazy. And I like literally had to keep like 10 feet between me and him because I was that afraid of him. I was like, you're going back and forth, buddy, this like bipolar situation. And I was like, and then he went off and he created a new character for himself, that he's this, wonderful dog lover with all this money. And he's, still, I don't know if he was still working for Disney or what he was doing at that point, but I know he got a job as like a server or something. And then he completely did this to another girl, which you and I met later, and then another girl. And then, yeah, I don't even know the situation with the baby daddy stuff, but
The dogs disappeared, within a year. It's like he's this dog lover, but then where are the dogs?
because he
And
can't
then,
support himself, he keeps going from girl to girl. Because I had a
mhm,
house, right? So he's like, oh,
mhm,
I'll move into
yeah.
your house. Right.
Mhm,
So after we
mhm.
sold his and he had all this money, he thought he was going to be moving in with me. Well, that wasn't happening.
I mean, that's the thing about narcissists is they're all about trying to see what they can get out of you. What can you do for me? How can you serve me in some way? Um, and that's even he was looking for material things, but even people like Puff Daddy, like he's in the news now. He doesn't need anything material. He doesn't need money, but he uses these women because they can do something for him, for his image, or you know, um, to get other women to create this facade. And so that's what it is. Their relationships are based on creating some sort of situation that somehow benefits them, but not the person that they're taking advantage of or using.
Yeah. And it's
Um,
chronic. Like, they
yeah,
can't stop it and they don't learn from it. You would think that after like the fifth or sixth girl, they would have learned from it. But it appears that not, I say this to you all the time. I wish it was illegal. I wish there was a way that in a court of law, I can prove, and maybe if you have enough money, you could, the damages that were done to you. You got a lawyer, the amount of money that you spent on this person when you were
yeah,
being completely deceived, kind of the same way that they get like an immigration lawyer to check and see if your marriage is legit. It's like, I
right.
kind of wish there was something that you could prove, like the mental damage that has occurred to you or the way that people view you. Like, there's so many things that happen because of a person, and they get you into their orbit, and it's like this hurricane that just wrecks your life.
Yeah, it's true. All of that is so damaging. But like I said, and I think that, women and people who are survivors of a narcissistic abuse situation, they become stronger and smarter and they start to learn more about themselves
How to get
and
away with it.
yep, what they see in other people, what they're going to put up with, what they're not going to put up with. I will never find myself in that situation again. That was extremely damaging and hurtful, and I still blame myself for a lot of it. And yet at the same time, mentally, I was not able to decipher reality from his reality, from what was really going on to what I believed was going on. And so that situation, I was mentally ill in my own way by being extremely codependent on this narcissistic story and believing it in such a massive way that I was going to pour everything I had into it in a short amount of time. That's not healthy. That's not normal. I was definitely behaving in an erratic, unhealthy, normal, a not normal way. Definitely not something that, even my friends were like, what are you doing? And what just happened to you? And what did you allow to happen? So everybody judged me. Everybody looked at me with a side eye. I definitely was, looked at as being really dumb. And I don't blame them. And I definitely understand because I should have known better. I was old enough to know better. I was much older than him. I have been in relationships before. I've never been in that type of a situation before. So once I realized what it was and went to therapy, and when I explained everything that happened to me, and my therapist looked at me and said, "You just experienced a narcissist." I said, "What is that?" I literally remember sitting there saying, what is that? What is
Wow.
narcissism?" And that's when I started the research and the learning and light bulbs were going off. And I'm like, yes, this is what just happened to me. And it really helped me understand the situation better. So I didn't feel so alone. And I didn't feel like I was the only one that has experienced something like this.
I think that is one great thing about therapy is going and learning things that and getting that clarification because you can Google things and MD them, but like that is the one good thing about a therapist is them putting a button on things and making it all connect and make sense. I always have this like idea that because I went to therapy, I did 6 sessions and they were like free under Disney or whatever. And my therapist was like, I don't know that you need, and she even said, she's like, I don't know that you need to keep revisiting this because, like you said, for me, I felt like I could be strong enough to move on, and not everybody is that way. But I felt like I was getting angry at every session, just revisiting everything. And I was like, I'd rather just like push that away and say F off. Like I don't want this person to control me. I don't want to feel like I'm a victim. So I feel like there's a balance when it comes to therapy. Do you like I don't know how you feel how much it's helped you
Yeah,
and if revisiting those things is more painful. I don't know.
no, I can definitely say that, there's a time and place for therapy, and then there's a time and place to live your life. I don't feel that therapy is a ongoing lifelong thing. And maybe some people will disagree with me, but I do think that there's a time and a place for therapy to help you get through situations, to help you better understand yourself, to put things in perspective. But I do think that too much therapy can make you overthink things and can make you start to question everything. And so I felt, when I got to a certain point where I started to feel like myself again and feel strong and feel like, okay, I understood what happened. It's time to move on. I'm feeling good again. Then I stopped, and started to live my life because, yes, revisiting that is a very painful, upsetting thing. And now that it's been, gosh, 9, almost 10 years removed, it's just a blip in my history. It's a blip on the radar, but it's one that I became a different person as a result of it, and a better person, and a smarter person, and a more self-aware person. And I think some people do what I did and learn from it. And then there are some people, unfortunately, say that you're married to a narcissist for 30, 40, 50 years, and you're just in this cycle and you never get out and you never go to therapy and you never know what's going on. That is the reality for some people. And that's really, really sad.
Yeah. And then at that point, I would agree that they would need therapy because they aren't aware and they need to go in and remove themselves from their personal that lifestyle and have somebody from the outside see it, because we always um, view ourselves a certain way. And it's always good to ask people how they view it. Like it's good when you have good friends in your circle, like you said, that were like, this is not normal. You need to open your eyes. And at the time, you're like, what do you mean? And then when you went to therapy and they opened your eyes, that's great. But it's the same as physical therapy. You have an injury and you get through it. You go to PT, and then once you're good and you can walk again, get back to your life. And I feel like that is how therapy should be used. And it's like, passing on the baton. It's seeing that Sherpa up that mountain and being like, cool, this Sherpa got me to this part on the mountain, and now I'm going to be handed off, and I'm going to go on to a different journey with this in
They
my
call
life.
that, yep, they call that ruminating. I don't know if you've heard the word, that's a therapy word. When you ruminate, that's exactly what you said that you were doing, where you're like, I don't need to keep revisiting this. That's rumination. That's when someone can't seem to get over, they're trying to make sense of something and they can't, and they're not going to therapy, and they're just going over the same things without making any progress, without really understanding, without, you know, having a reason behind it. That's called rumination. And I was doing a lot of ruminating during that time. And they were telling me to stop ruminating, stop reliving this situation that you had experienced, because now that you've learned from it, it's time to stop ruminating and like going over it again and again and again. And people do that, and they ruminate, and they can't seem to move on. And again, that's a sad situation for a lot of people. And it took me a long time to figure out, like, when is it time for me to move on? I don't think I at the time was wanting to get back with that person or wanting to, have a relationship with the person, but I was still trying to figure things out. I was still very confused. And that's the rumination part, where some things you're just never going to understand and you're never going to make sense of. And that's okay. And you just have to move on from it.
Yeah. And I think the therapy is good for getting that understanding and reflecting on yourself, and I do believe it sounds like non-emotional of me to say, but like I was saying in my last podcast, like to compartmentalize isn't necessarily not healthy. It's just realizing where certain things in your life go. What box does this fit in? And I can put that up on the shelf, like literally a box. I have a box of baby shit, and I'm like, I don't want to see this every day. I'm going to put it real high on a shelf. I'm going to put it way over there so I don't have to see this every day. And it's not to say that, because once you're affected by a narcissist, you're forever affected by a narcissist. The trauma will come up every once in a while. And like I said, when I ran into that guy at work, I immediately had fear. I had like fear in my body, and I felt scared. And I actually spoke up, where like the old Katie would not have said anything. I called him out and I said, I don't think what you're saying is real. And I was like, and I feel, I didn't tell him I felt nervous, but I said, I feel disrespected. I feel like you're not listening. And I was like, and I don't feel comfortable. And
Yeah,
I
I
said
was going to
that.
say uncomfortable is the word I remember you saying. You felt very uncomfortable around him.
Yes, it was something that I could feel, and it made me like shake in my body. Like it made me nervous. I was like, I don't feel safe. I was like, there's something wrong here. I can tell that you're lying. Everything coming out of your mouth is a character that you've created. I don't believe anything that you're saying. And when I asked him to, I said, what, he was trying to claim that he had like connections with like big agents, and like he wanted to help me. And I was like, what agents? Who did you work for? He couldn't tell me. And he's like, I like to keep that on the down low. I'm like, no, what entertainer do you know doesn't like to brag about their life? I'm like, absolutely not. You're lying. You're making this up. And I was like, and I had to leave and then tell my boss immediately. And I'm like, back then people might have thought that I was being irrational, because what happens is they put on this character, and these narcissists love to smile. They love their attention. And so outwardly, if you only know them like on a surface level,
They're the most charming person in the room.
the most charming person in the room. So then I sound like a crazy bitch who's just, trying to get my friend fired. And like, so I had to be careful with my words to be like, let me explain why I think these things. I was like, I have experienced this. And I'm like, you don't have to believe me, but what you need to believe is I feel uncomfortable in my workspace and I don't want to be scheduled with this person anymore. And luckily nowadays, people will actually take that to heart, and like, you got to go to HR, or you got to do these things. And there are steps, to make sure for your work safety. I mean, we literally have all of these classes online that we take for our jobs that tell us, like, if you feel uncomfortable, contact this person. So, like, if your boss doesn't support you, then you need to go above your boss and be like, this is not okay. You make me watch these 12-hour online classes. Well, you better listen to me.
Yeah. I mean, look, I worked for a narcissist, my last job. In Jacksonville when, I was here the first time. And so once I started to learn about, because I was around the same time I was going through this, situation and trying to figure things out in therapy and everything, I was realizing that those traits applied to my boss too. So I am being bombarded by narcissists all around me, and that can happen. And then I think, well, that's a lot of the reason why I too was very confused and having a breakdown, is because I'm not only dealing with this in my personal life, but I'm also dealing with this at work. And now I'm realizing that. And it was just too much. It was too much. And I left. I left that job. Had to go to Orlando to kind of restart things and figure myself out. And I mean, I can honestly say that, even though I had an unconventional path and I had to do some things that were pretty drastic just to get back on the right path and figure myself out. I mean, I am happier than I've ever been. I feel more centered, more grounded, more self-aware than I've ever been, but it was a lot of work, and it's not over. I mean, I still have to do work. I'm not perfect, and I'm not, where I want to be in life, but I'm making progress. And I feel that, I'm very happy with where I'm at. And unfortunately, you have to go through tough times to get to the solid, the good, grounded ones. And so that's what happened. And, it's not uncommon.
And I've been with you from the beginning of all this. And I kind of witnessed that with you. I mean, I saw you recently and I was like, you seem happy. You seem comfortable. There's I could see the weight lifted off your shoulders, like physically. And, I'm an empath, so I might see those things more than other people do, but it made me like so happy for you that you're just so comfortable in life right now. And I heard this quote recently that was, God rearranged your circle because he heard conversations you didn't. And that's been tough for me because my entire life was turned upside down after COVID. And my entire circle of friends, like people take it for granted that they can go to work and see their friends every day. And I'm like, I don't see anyone. You actually have to call me, or we have to make an appointment to see each other. You got to pencil me in because, it's nice. Like people fill their cup by just going to see somebody and don't realize that their cup is being filled subconsciously because they're like, cool, I got to see my friends, have a few conversations and then go home, where I'm not having conversations with anybody, which is why I love my podcast. But, it's interesting when you realized the toxic behavior that was happening in your workplace. And you're like, actually, I know I moved out of my town, but now I'm in this new one and it's actually brought great people into my life. And it's probably pulled back on like any kind of anxiety or stress. And I can like feel that from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you're a very, like you said, you're an empath. So you're aware of energy. Energy is big
Observation.
for
Yeah.
you. Yeah. So you feed on people's energy, and you always have a good energy about you. And that's what I've always loved, is that your energy is very positive, is very happy, and that's why I love spending time with you. I love traveling with you. I love doing these things with you because you are such a good energy person. I've always struggled with that. I've always been very self-conscious. My confidence was always very low. I always had to struggle with like, how can I get this positive, confident energy, within myself, because I'm attracted to that in other people. I want to be just as happy and confident and, living this positive energy life. And it is not something that came naturally for me, but I feel more and more I'm becoming that person. I'm becoming the person that I've wanted to be. And it's really fun.
I
And
love
it's, and
that.
it's happy.
And thank you for the compliment. I don't want to talk about Puff Daddy too much, but he's been
Well,
in the news. But what happened?
he just released an apology video on Instagram.
Who
And
cares? He's just trying not to go to jail. He's like, please don't put me in jail. Sorry, I killed Tupac.
he's
Bye.
basically saying, I'm sorry that video came out and you found out what I did.
Yeah. And that is narcissism right there.
Well, he's the most charming person in the room. Everybody loved him for years. And it all catches up. It all does. I mean,
Nobody's
that bad
backing him up.
behavior, no one. The bad behavior just catches up to them. And that's why you have to not be around that type of a damaged person. And you don't want that to like rub off on you or reflect on you in any way, because they will bring down everyone around them. A narcissist can definitely, once they start to see their downfall coming, they panic it becomes this, downfall of everybody that was around them. And so that's why when you recognize someone is not living in reality and is living in this narcissistic fiction of a world that they create, you got to get away from it because they'll bring you down.
And he's going to hurry up and try to create this new character, which is Mr. Apology. And I'm actually a nice guy. And oh my gosh.
He's renamed himself Love, just the word love.
Oh, I know. I think one of his kids' name is Love, which I was like, wait, that's weird. It's funny because like before the millennium, like the 80s and 90s, whatever, we all just like trusted people and no one got caught. No one really had a voice. We all just like took pills strangers gave us at concerts, went into hotel rooms and backstage green rooms, while actually Pauly Shore offered lines of coke to me on a wooden table at one of his shows. True story. But you got to be careful like who's filming today. And it's funny because it used to be cool to be bad and now it's not. Like everyone's got a squeaky clean image because everyone's videotaping. And we used to like seek out bad boys, James Dean, Johnny Depp, Kenickie from Grease, like no one ever wanted to be that way. It was just what you did. It seemed cooler, smoking cigarettes. Now, after like the Johnny Depp trial, like we see that waking up in a pile of your own vomit isn't as attractive anymore. Like you're actually really not that great, Johnny, and not saying that Amber Heard didn't have her own issues. But I watched that whole trial and in some ways I felt bad for her because at the root of all of it, what you're watching is that she was manipulated by a narcissist. And she was a narcissist herself. And that's why they kind of like went well together. But like she should have just left. And I know that's easier said than done because, like, as you know, that your parents and the way my parents are in that generation, like, they don't leave, they stay. They're like, you're married, you stay through thick and thin, like, whatever. And it's hard because it's always easier said than done. It's like, well, so I had sympathy for her, but then I also didn't because I'm like, you decided to stay in this. If you didn't like his lifestyle, and she's like, oh, but he was doing coke all the time. I'm like, you knew that. You knew that's what he was doing. You signed up for it. You allowed this behavior to continue. At least, like you and I started seeing it and found our way out of it. You know what I mean? And like I said, easier said than done. I'm not trying to, but it's looking at all of those things and then experiencing what we have experienced is interesting. And then even with the Kevin Spacey. Well, first of all, how did you feel about the Johnny? Did you watch any of the Johnny Depp trial and the Amber
I
Heard thing?
did. And, I was very conflicted because, one day I would think that she was crazy. And then the next day I would think he's crazy. And
Yeah.
then I never could figure out, and then I just realized like they're both a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I never could figure out like who I felt sorry for more. It's like I felt sorry for both of them. And yet at the same time, I'm like, you guys created this world and
Yeah.
you lived in it and you didn't even try to get out of it. And now here we are. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, I did watch it and I did conflict on each day, like who I felt sorry for and whose side I was on. But then in the end, that just told me that they both have issues and they're both wrong.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, like criminally, you can't really, like, that's why he won the trial. He's like, technically, I didn't do anything criminal. Yeah, we got in a lot of really heated arguments and bad things happened, but that's life. I mean, people have domestic issues all of the
Mhm.
time, but I do feel he slightly manipulated her, but I feel like she manipulated him too. There was definitely this like seeming back and
Mhm.
forth, like he would say certain things like, you're my girl and like, all these like sweet things, but then not cherish her. He wasn't cherishing her as she wanted to be cherished. And then that made her kind of go off the deep end. So that was I agree with you. It was hard, and I feel like people got very strong decisions because in this world, it's always red or blue. It can't be this third thing
Right.
or this fourth thing. It's got to be you choose a side, which I think we got to get out of this thinking in our society that you have to pick a side. There could be a third or fourth option. There could be a mixture of these things together. It's not the first time that two sides have been able to come to an agreement and see eye to eye.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the problem. I mean, I think with trying to figure out what's going on in other people's lives and relationships, it's like when you try to figure that out, it's like you don't know the whole story. I mean, even in that trial, we're just getting part of the story. We're
Yep.
not getting the whole story. So it's hard to make, a decision of who's right and who's wrong based on just what you're getting out of a courtroom. Yeah, I just try to like take everything for face value and, and I kind of watch it for entertainment like everyone else. But in the end, sometimes I can't come up with a decision on, you know, who's right and who's wrong when it comes to like relationships. I mean, when it comes to criminal activities and criminal trials, that's a whole different thing. But this was a civil trial and this was a relationship situation. And so those types of things are really hard to like side with, unless he was just violently abusing her, which he wasn't.
Right. This is not Chris Brown and Rihanna where there's like proof. And I mean, she tried to have proof, but like the timing was off. But I think the moral of when you're watching that is you're like, these people aren't good for each other. Whatever their personal, conditions or
Very
issues
toxic.
are, they don't fit together and they shouldn't have been together and they should have ended it earlier on rather than trying to drag each other through the mud. And so that's what was immature about the whole situation. If Johnny Depp wants to, do drugs all the time, like he'll suffer the consequences of that. And he has, you know what I mean? Like
Can
it's
we
not
just talk
healthy
about
and he's quitting,
how he used to be
supposedly.
so beautiful and now he's just so gross?
Well, look at the drugs. That's what happens to you, when you get addicted to something like that. I hate that celebrities with their money, they get so bored that they feel like they have nothing else better to do than to do drugs. Like I said, it doesn't make you cool. Like when are we gonna the Viper Room? When are we gonna get over that stuff? And then I wanted to talk quickly about Kevin Spacey. I actually know some people who have experienced situations with Kevin Spacey. And it was crazy. I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually coming out. And the irony is that the thing is on Netflix and, his House of Cards is kind of what started Netflix. So I was like kind of laughing about that. But, he watching the interview, I just kept seeing this character and the fake tears and really just him. He just kept saying, I just want to get back to my life. I just want to get back to my life, and it's this panic. And that's like what our ex did. It was this panic. I just want it all to go away. Okay, let me move on to the next girl who knows nothing about my past so I can create a new character. I just want to get back to my life. Well, good for you. I'm so glad that you just want to get back to your life. But do you understand how many lives you have affected, that they have trauma now for the things that you did, the way you touched yourself, the way that you pushed yourself onto other people and married straight men? Like at least possibly if he had just focused on the gay men in the gay community, it probably wouldn't have looked so bad. It wouldn't have been so bad because they would have responded with like, cool, you're Kevin Spacey. I'll have some ass. But he was going after straight men who were completely uncomfortable, and then using his power as a celebrity to be like, I can help you in this industry. I can be your mentor. Although now he backpedals on that. Like, why would anybody think that? I'm like, because you invited them up your elevator to your apartment and then said that you could get them connections and help them. Like, hello. And these stories are so specific that it's like these people aren't making this up. And there's too many. That's the problem. There's like 70 to 100 people who have like, yep, I have dealt with this situation. And it was chronic. He had a plan. He did the same thing to the same people, all or not the same people. Well, I mean, he did have repeat offenders that, he kept in touch with for years. But he had the same process, like, oh, we're gonna be out at a party together, then we're gonna go smoke some weed, then I'm gonna take you back to my place. And he just kept and that's what serial killers do, which is why I say it's a sociopathy. It's this thing that they know works and they keep doing it every single time if they know it works.
And that kind of makes me think about like what we talked about when it comes to, you know, being more aware in today's world than we were.
The
Like,
patterns.
yes, I mean, and I do attribute it to the Me Too movement, and I think you said the same thing. But when we were, watching this stuff in, the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, even mid 2000s, you know, it was just, I don't know, it just was accepted. And we didn't even really see a whole lot wrong with a lot of the behaviors and the questioning and the things that were going on in Hollywood and in, the entertainment world that were so foul that now you look at it and you're thinking, I'm disgusted. I can't even imagine that we even thought this was okay. When it comes to like the questioning of, Britney Spears' virginity, we all thought that was fine. Like, oh yeah, is she a virgin or not? Let's find out from Diane Sawyer,
That
who's,
Diane
this
Sawyer interview,
journalist.
oh, I just, and you can
And
see Brittany's face, like cocking her head to the side. Like, do you
now
think this is
you're just
appropriate to
mortified
be
when you
asking
see it.
me?
Are you just mortified when you see it?
mortified. Like Brittany is just like, why are you asking? Would I ask you these questions? Like, let's talk about, I would have just turned that around and been like, how about you? Tell me about your sex life. Tell me, like, it's awful. It's awful. And we allowed it to happen because apparently that was journalism, asking the hard questions. Barbara Walters was known for being like, I'm going to ask you a very personal question. Like, I liked Barbara, like
Oprah too.
she was tame, and she was sweet, but I felt like a lot of times Diane Sawyer was vicious. And I think she was probably, pushed by, I don't know. And maybe she can do her own interview one day by higher up men in her department to ask those questions, and all of her interviews, people would, David Letterman would make the most disgusting comments to women, and he's, kind of gone in his retirement and is like, please, I hope people don't come after me. But he
And we
even
would
admitted,
watch, we would,
that he
honestly,
learned from the Me Too movement. And David Letterman was like, I look back at it at myself and can't even realize like can't, because that was just the times.
we all thought it was funny. I mean, honestly, I remember like watching some of that stuff and not being offended. Where now I'm just like, it just goes to show that like as a society we've grown and we've become more respectful in, how we should treat people and how we should respect people and their boundaries and, not get personal with them, not get in their personal space, not, mistreat women because of misogyny being, accepted and all of these things. I mean, I'm so glad for the Me Too movement because it opened our eyes as a society. And people are actually being punished for their behavior. I mean, Harvey Weinstein, thank God he's in prison.
Yeah.
And what is the other guy?
The quiet on set thing, or oh, I know what you're talking about.
The quiet on set, but I'm talking about, yeah, the guy who died in prison who had the island.
Yes. Like, and everybody's like, somebody obviously shivved him. Like
What's his name? Epstein.
George Epstein?
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey. I was like,
not George, but Jeffrey. So Jeffrey Epstein, so people, well, he killed himself or maybe got killed. And
somebody definitely killed him.
But regardless, I'm just thinking back about how things were so acceptable about the treatment of women, of young women. I mean, look at the Nickelodeon special, young children.
Yeah, quiet on set. Yeah, to me, like the 70s, 80s, 90s, like that's like our version of raping and pillaging. When you find out what happened in history, how like women were just not considered human beings, that we were just used for making babies,
and then
women, and then women were blamed for being infertile when a lot of the times it was actually the men who, were sterile, basically. It's funny how every generation experiences their own prejudice and sexism and we really, I mean, I'm so proud of this century for our time.
Thank God we live in today's world
movement, honestly. And even though every generation has its crap with the war and all that stuff, it's so funny because looking back at me and Damon watch a lot of old war movies, and like we just watched Schindler's List again, and I was crying and I was like, I just can't believe this actually happened. Like, what the hell is wrong with people? Because I think if it was me, but then like you see the manipulation and how people got to that point, and I'm going to do like a whole episode on that, but it just blows my mind. It blows my mind that anything that awful could happen, that this humanity and this empathy didn't exist in people. We were just growing sociopaths. Like they just existed everywhere around us and they didn't have feelings and they could just shoot somebody in the head and not care. But we are lucky that we live in this time. And I'm so proud of the movement that we've had and that people are like, oh, I can't believe, even comedians are like looking at old specials of themselves saying something that they thought was funny. And they're like, I don't think that's funny today.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you happen to look up the Kansas City Chiefs kicker?
No.
You never did. Okay.
I didn't get a chance to. I had to do Puff Daddy first. So
no, I understand. There's a lot of like, crazy stories out there. And
so he went to somebody's graduation and made basically a sexist speech, correct?
Yeah, I will give you the Cliff Notes version. Okay. So the guy,
and this is your team.
Well, yeah, I grew up in Kansas City and I'm a Chiefs fan, but I cannot be a fan of Harrison Buckner is his name. All right. So he went to the Benedictine College graduation and he was the speaker. Basically, he said that women have been, what did he say, diabolically, that's his word, lied to about having careers and being, career women. And that's the path that we should take. When the best path in the world for a woman is to be a wife and a mother and to stay home and raise their children. Basically, if you haven't done this or if you don't do this, then you're not living your fullest extent of a happy life. What he talks about his wife. This is a man in his 20s.
Oh,
Okay.
like
He's
as if
not
he knows
even,
anything.
well, first of all,
Your
I'm
brain's
like,
not even fully developed until age 25. So,
how are we going to take a man who kicks the ball for a living? How are we going to take his advice on how to live our lives? But I'm also upset because, first of all, he's speaking for all women. First of all, who are you and how do you get that license? There were so many students who were graduating from this college who were women who were crying, saying he ruined my graduation with this misogynistic, horrific speech. And, some Catholic leaders were even going against what he said, saying that he is pushing a dangerous gender ideology into the youth of America.
wow.
I'm just reading this online, but and then even the NFL said his views are not those of the NFL organization. We're committed to inclusion, because he also targeted gays by saying that, Pride Month is like ungodly and sinful. And that, all of these things that he said in his speech.
What a way to use your platform. Good Lord.
However, on the other side of it, his jersey is now the most sold jersey, the top selling jersey. And all of these Trumpers are saying, finally somebody who's,
well,
speaking the truth.
If these people are going to buy a Trump Bible, then yeah, they're going to buy his jersey.
He said that, okay, he's 28. And he said that his wife embraced one of the most important titles for a woman, homemaker.
Yeah, because they have financial freedom because they're rich. Like, this is stupid.
I'm like,
I'm like,
of
in
all,
today's economy, we need to have each person, wife and husband, need to have two jobs. It's ridiculous in this economy.
He called the Pride Month a deadly sin. And all of this stuff, I'm like, okay, first of all, you're a football player who kicks a ball. You're a kicker. You don't even play the whole game. You come out and you kick a field goal, and that's your job. Second of all, you're 28. Third, there are many women who have to choose careers because they don't have a choice, because they can't stay at home and they can't just find some random man to marry and have their children. What if they physically can't have children? What if their bodies don't allow them to have children? What
Hashtag
if,
me.
right, right. So are you lesser of a woman than his wife? I mean,
No.
am I lesser of a woman because I chose a career path because I never got married and never had children? So
You're one of the best fur moms I've ever seen. And I know I'm a good cat mom. So
we love our fur babies for sure.
You definitely have great motherly instincts.
Anyway, his speech is absurd. And again, I mean, I can't even imagine that this person isn't a narcissist. He has to be.
Mm-hmm.
I would guarantee if somebody diagnosed him, he's a narcissist. Let's go back to the narcissist thing, because I was going to say this earlier and I forgot. When someone who is a narcissist goes to therapy and they're diagnosed, the therapist always has a problem treating them because narcissists never change and they never recognize what a normal person would recognize in themselves. So I talk to therapists who say, I don't even treat narcissists once I realize that's what they are, because it's a waste of time. They never change.
Yeah, and they continue to lie. They're like, that's not true. They don't want to believe it.
There's something so innate in them that is unfixable. They said we can treat every other personality disorder, every other problem that people have, but narcissism cannot be fixed.
What's scary about it is they say it's genetic too. As we've discovered that it's not just your physical traits. A lot of these, bipolar disorder, all of these things, they get passed down. And, the good thing is, realizing if you have that head on your shoulder, how to help it, how to treat it. It's a good thing when people go to therapy and they use therapy the way that you're supposed to use therapy. Like I said, I still believe that you don't have to go to therapy forever. I do believe that there is a time to take what you've learned and use it and apply it to your life, because I think sometimes, like I said, I think it can layer on itself. And then at that point, you're just revisiting things, and that's not going to
Become
help
stuck.
you. You're
Yeah,
stuck.
you become stuck when you're, again, ruminating or revisiting things that you haven't been able to move past. There has to be, like you said, a point in time where you process it, you learn from it, and you live based on your new sense of knowledge
I
on
mean,
all the
my
feelings.
own my own father recently, and my struggles with him. He's an alcoholic. He has bipolar disorder, manic depressive. He was diagnosed at the VA. He always goes to the VA. I've never seen the VA, but he has the paperwork. I've seen it. And he takes medication. And of course, he abuses the medication because he drinks with it. However, he'll have his good times. And when he's like actually just taking the medication, he's not drinking as much, whatever, which is great. And then you see like the real him. It's this Jekyll and Hyde thing. You see like the two versions of this person. But he came home, I don't know, 2, 3 months ago. My mom told me, and he was like, "Oh, I don't have bipolar disorder anymore, and I'm not an alcoholic. Yeah, I went back to the therapist, and I'm good to go." And I'm like, "Oh no, like that's not how this works. You don't go to therapy for it doesn't go away. It's something that you live with when you're diagnosed with
Yeah,
something.
I mean,
Sadly,
I've been
sadly,
diagnosed with
but
depression and I
yeah,
live with depression and I will always have depression. Now, that doesn't mean I have to live a depressed life.
right.
I have treatments, I have, medication, I have therapy. Um, but I know that that's something that I have. And that's okay. I'll live with it for the rest of my life and I will manage it in the best way I can. But it is a diagnosis
But isn't
that
that sad? This
doesn't go away.
denial that he has, like,
It is sad.
it
And I'm
doesn't
sorry.
matter all the things that he's done. And he doesn't even remember half of them, because when you have these disorders, you convince yourself that those things didn't happen or it wasn't that bad. The effect that the thing that makes me the most angry is, while you can work on yourself, when somebody refuses to work on themselves and they make excuse after excuse after excuse while affecting other people's lives, fine. I don't care. You want to do something, you want to be Johnny Depp and you want to jump off a boat and be drunk and high and all these things, fine, go for it. That's your life. Like anybody can live their lives they want to live the way that they want to live it. But when you start affecting other people's lives and you don't care, this lack of empathy, that's where that part of me is just emotionally wrecked. And it's like, and you want to shake the person, like, can't you see what you are doing? Like, why don't you understand like how you're affecting everybody around you? Like, go be a drunk, go be a bum, go for it, but don't drag
Well,
me
that's
down
what
with you.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry that you and your mom and your family have dealt with this for so many years and you're still dealing with it and you will always deal with it. And it's hard, because again, these conditions don't just affect the person that has them, it affects the entire family unit. All these people who love that person are also suffering and hurting and being affected. And the same thing with my family. And it's something that I think family units all over the world deal with, maybe one person in their family who has a personality disorder, narcissistic disorder, something. And there are just branches of effects that happen around the family.
Yeah, and it's sad because you have to make the choice to remove yourself. Like I remember when I left when I was 18 or 19 or whatever, and I ran away and joined the circus, my mom was in tears and I was like, I can't be around this anymore. And then when I came back, I was like, I got to get my own apartment. I can't be around this. And every time I left her, she would get so upset. And it's very strange to be a child begging your mom to get divorced. Nobody usually wants their parents to get divorced. They want them to work it out. They want them to stay together. And the sad part is, I get it. Like when I got older and I had more adult conversations with my mother, I'm like, why do you stay? And she's like, because when it's good, it's really good. And he really loves me and he cherishes me. And, and he can be great. But I don't, it's sad because I feel like I've blocked out a lot of the good stuff, the good memories. Like I hardly can remember them. Sometimes I'll see videos of me like from 3 to 7, and it looks like we're having a good time. And I go, I don't remember that. Like, I don't, I just remember the bad stuff, and it's healthy to, for me, it was healthier for me to create my own life. I was like, I'm going to create my own life. And, and I'll see my dad on the holidays and I'll be like, hey, dad. And I've learned it's more stressful to try to help, and it's more stressful to fight because I've done all the things. I've tried crying, I've tried therapy, I've tried so many different ways of conversing with him. I've tried being angry, being sad, being empathetic, sitting down, just all these different ways. And I'm like, I'm not a therapist. This isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. I shouldn't be therapizing. I know that's not a word, therapizing my parents, and if you guys don't want to work on it, it's not my life. It's not my job, and it's sad when you have to remove yourself. It's sad when it's like, people will be like, this is going to sound not kind, I guess, but I'm jealous of people who had a relationship with their father and they're like, yeah, but my dad's dead. I'm like, yeah, but at least you had a relationship with your dad. My dad's alive and I don't even have one with him, And it's like, it blows my mind that like I feel those feelings, that I feel that way. I'm like, God, my dad's here and he can't get his shit together. He can't be there for me. And I'm not saying he never was there for me. He adores me. I'm like his golden child. Like he loves everything I've done with my career and my life, but he would never knew how to be a part of my life. If that makes any sense. It's
Mhm.
literally like somebody watching me from the outside rather than being involved in it
Right.
more.
No, it's true. I mean, I am so sorry that that's been your experience because I know how hard you have had to overcome a lot of the damage that that has caused. But you have, and you're so strong for it, and you have been there for your mother, and you have a great family, and you do everything within your power, and you know your limitations, and that is so important. You know when to walk away from something that is not worth your energy or time anymore. And when your father doesn't want to change himself, you can't change him. So you have to make that decision to save your own sanity. You know, my situation is very similar. Um, but but different. You know, we have different dads, we have different situations, but very similar in the sense that my dad wasn't there for me in a healthy way because he wasn't a healthy person. And that's what I see with your dad too. You know, he loves you, he wants to be there for you, but he doesn't know how because he can't, because
And
he's
he hasn't
not
dealt with his own stuff. He hasn't
it's not
done he
mentally
hasn't done
there.
therapy the way you're supposed to do therapy, I think. Because he he was born 16 years after his sisters, and they didn't have enough rooms in the house. They only had a 2-bedroom house, and he slept on the patio his whole life as a child until his sisters grew up and moved out of the house, and then he got their room. But like, can you imagine that life? He had a
No, and
hard
that
life.
and that
His dad was an alcoholic too. I feel
that
bad for him.
that's exactly what that generation had to deal with though. You know, when you think about it, my dad, same similar situation where he was an only child. However, he was an only child, but um, you know, his parents would go to the bar and leave him in the car for 8 hours at a time. You know, things like that that now you would go to jail for,
Yeah, my
you
dad
know.
went to the bar when he was 13.
Yeah. I mean, so they have things that, again, like you said, are not our problems to fix. You know,
Yeah.
as their children, we take on a lot, but we can't be the fixer of their problems, even though we try to, and then we realize it's not going to happen. We can't fix their problems.
Well, just to wrap this up, that's like such a beautiful way to end it, because sometimes it really takes like somebody else telling you that you're you're seen, or that your strength is inspirational or whatever, because sometimes you're hurting and you're being strong for so long. It's a lot to carry, and just the acknowledgement of somebody pointing out like, I think you're doing a good job. I think, and that's how I feel about watching you go through your journey. I know that sometimes you feel like you lose a part of yourself and you're like, how did I used to be? And now maybe we're more guarded than we used to be. We're a lot more guarded than we used to be. A part of our greenness, our openness, our trust, our spirit, a part of that dimmed a little bit, but you can get back to it. And I have seen you get back to it. And now you're like, and like I said, I know I'm not trying to dismiss um therapy. I'm just saying once you've gone through it, put it in a box and put it on a shelf and be like, who am I? Don't let that person control you. Don't let that person define who you are. And I feel like that's what I've done, especially with a few different exes of mine. I've put it in a box and I said, okay, bye. I'm going to get back to being Katie Rose. I'm fun. Let's party.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. You go through these experiences, you take what you can from it, you put on a shelf what you don't want, and you live your life.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do.
And if it rears its ugly head again, then you deal with it. You could go back to therapy. Like I'm not saying therapy's bad. I'm just saying, that's how we move on, right? But I love you so much. This is actually one of my favorite interviews I've ever had, and I can't wait to put it out there. So we will be posting this, and I will be excited, and I'm going to share it with the world because I think it's something that needs to be talked about more openly, and for people to be able to see the signs of narcissism and understand it's not you, and how to recognize it and then get away from it. And honestly, like you said, the best way to do that is to go to a therapist and talk to them about it.
Yep. And in the meantime, you'll learn about yourself. Well, I love you too. And you have made me a better person by being such a good friend and by being such a great sounding board and listener. And I just wish that everybody had a friend like you in their life.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. It's too early for that. I gotta go to a birthday party for a little kid. But
Oh,
I love
well,
you
have
so
fun.
much. Thank you so much
I
for
love you
doing this.
too.
I know it's not an easy thing to open up about, but I love you so much.
Hi, Katie Rose.
Bye. Ah, what a great time that was talking to one of my really good friends. And it was a conversation that has been overdue. I know a lot of people struggle being in these situations, and you are not alone. There's a couple of things that I kind of forgot to mention, but I remember when I first started dating this person that the lies were like they were already happening. And yes, it was what Marilyn said when it's like, it's too good to be true. They're saying all the things that you want to hear. I remember one of our first dates, he drew a bath for me and expected me to get in the bath, like put like candles and stuff. And I'm like, I just met you. Like, is this what you think I want? Did I write this somewhere on my Facebook? Like, and are you trying to emulate this and be this new character? Doing something that isn't organic, or we're not there yet. Just thinking back on it, it was like he was trying to rush the relationship. And I remember that he was trying to quickly get out of his situation and then jump into a new one with me so he could abandon that and start a different life and run away, because things were really getting real. Like they were going to be walking down the aisle before he knew it. And then he had me thinking the same thing once I was with him. And it's pretty amazing that somebody can get in your head that much that you start thinking about those big dreams. And I was also warned, luckily, and that was kind of why I got warnings from people at work. And I had weird people looking at me strangely. He'd introduce me and then they'd kind of pause and like look at me. And I'm like kind of mad at those people. Looking back on it, I'm like, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you say he has a girlfriend? Or did he just break up with this girl because I just saw her only, a few weeks ago? It's something's up, you got to start saying stuff. People keep allowing others to get away with this behavior, and it's ruining lives. So if you see something, say something, right? That's the phrase. And not just that, trust your gut. My gut has gotten me out of a lot of situations and out of a lot of bad relationships. So trust your gut, listen to those instincts, and ask questions. Put people in their place. Don't allow them to manipulate you. Start asking those questions. Make them fear you rather than you fearing them. Don't allow this behavior because it is scary. It is absolutely terrifying when you realize that this character doesn't exist. And then you're wondering how much more there is. But rather than trying to find out, you just want to run away from it. So trust your gut, ask a lot of questions, and do your best. It's so difficult and it might take therapy, but to run away from that, move on, and understand it's not you, it's not your fault, it's not anything you did, and that there is still someone out there for you. And I know that sometimes they get so wrapped up in your world that you don't even know how to move forward. It's very difficult and it will just take time. But I do feel that you will come out on the other end stronger, and now you'll be able to see it and you won't let it happen to you. Narcissists can crush our spirits, and no matter how much evidence you show them, they will still turn it around and make it about you and not about them. And oftentimes they will exaggerate their achievements or the things that they've done in their life or their relationships. So, you know what? In the day of social media and Google, look them up. Don't be afraid to do that, because oftentimes that's what they're doing is they are inflating what their past is or who they really are. In my opinion, I find narcissists so terrifying that I don't understand how anybody could be in a relationship with them. I don't think they are capable of being in a relationship. And I would never, even with any amount of therapy, sadly, like I said, I felt like he should have been in jail for the things that he did. And that's how strong and I feel about it. That's how scary it can be, and borderline moving into that sociopathic behavior, that personality disorder. It's a very scary place to be. And especially if parents aren't catching it earlier on, then I don't know that there's any coming back from it, because they will just continuously do lie on top of lie on top of lie. So if you've ever been there, I feel you. If you ever want to reach out to me for a drink, I'm up for that too. Thank you guys so much for listening. I know this is a tough one to talk about and we could go on, but this has been Katie Rose, served straight up with a twist. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and let a friend know about the show. And if you're really feeling generous, rate it 5 stars. I also love having guests on my show, so if there's a topic that you want to chat about, contact me on my Facebook page at Katie Rose, straight up with a twist, or join the group page at SUWAT Team. See what I did there? SUWAT. SUWAT, SWAT team. Get it? Straight up with a twist? All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining, and tune in week to week with some more Katie Rose, straight up with a twist.